My name is Hannah Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a senior architectural designer in Columbus, Ohio. For the last 9 years, I've made a career out of restoring old buildings, preserving places people almost forgot mattered. Looking back, maybe that's why I held on to my family for so long. I kept believing neglected things could always be repaired. Every year, my grandmother, Evelyn, spent nearly 8 hours hand-painting the same white ceramic birthday plate with tiny blue forget-me-not flowers around the rim. In the center, in careful script, she'd write, "Happy Birthday, Hannah." After dinner, she would wash it by hand, wrap it in faded yellow tissue paper, and place it back inside the old oak cabinet. Somehow, despite everything, she never stopped believing one birthday would finally belong to me. At exactly 6:30 p.m. on my 32nd birthday, that plate sat untouched beside a chocolate cake while my parents raised a toast, not to me, but to my younger sister Lily. Months later, I found that plate shattered into 7 uneven pieces on my own kitchen floor. That wasn't where the story began. It began almost 3 decades earlier, when Lily became what everyone in the family called our miracle. Before Lily was born, my parents had endured 3 miscarriages over 6 years. Every relative knew the story. Every holiday included someone mentioning it. Every family gathering eventually circled back to how impossible Lily's birth had seemed. Nobody ever meant to make me invisible. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Lily was born on May 17, 1998. I was born on May 15, 1994. Our birthdays were only 2 days apart, which sounded charming whenever strangers heard it. Inside our family, it slowly became something else. By the time I turned 6, our birthdays had quietly merged into one weekend celebration. By the time I turned 10, people stopped calling it Hannah's birthday. It became Lily's miracle weekend. The speeches always sounded almost identical. "We're just so grateful she's here. We never thought we'd have this blessing." And eventually my mother's favorite sentence became as predictable as the candles themselves. "Family knows how to sacrifice." She said it whenever plans changed. Whenever gifts were combined. Whenever my favorite restaurant became Lily's choice. Whenever my birthday cake suddenly featured Lily's favorite strawberries instead of the chocolate frosting I loved. It wasn't shouted. It was spoken gently, almost kindly, which somehow made it harder to question. Grandma Evelyn was the only person who quietly resisted. She never argued during dinner. Never embarrassed my parents. Instead, she fought in tiny ways. She bought me a separate birthday card every single year. She wrapped my presents in blue paper because she remembered blue had been my favorite color since I was 8. She baked my own chocolate cake, even though most years nobody cut into it. And every year she painted that same ceramic plate. I used to think those small gestures weren't enough. Now I understand they were acts of quiet courage. The hardest truth for me to admit isn't that my parents overlooked me. It's that I helped them do it. Whenever friends asked why my birthday always looked like Lily's celebration, I'd laugh and explain that she was the miracle child. Whenever Grandma apologized, I'd tell her everything was fine. Whenever disappointment settled in my chest, I'd swallow it before anyone else noticed. I mistook silence for maturity. I confused endurance with love. By the time my 32nd birthday approached, I truly believed things had changed. For the first time in years, my parents insisted the celebration would finally be about me. And, because they put those promises in writing more than once, I let myself believe them. 2 weeks before my birthday, my mother created a family group chat called Hannah's 32nd Dinner. There were 11 people in it: my parents, Lily, Grandma Evelyn, 2 uncles, 3 cousins, my Aunt Melissa, and me. On April 28th at 8:14 p.m., Mom wrote, "Saturday is Hannah's night. Reservation confirmed for 6:30. I took a screenshot. 3 days later, my father replied with a thumbs-up emoji and added, "We'll celebrate Hannah properly this year." I took another screenshot. Even Lily texted me privately. "I'm excited. You deserve your own birthday for once." Those words stayed with me because they felt different. They sounded like someone else had finally noticed what I had spent years pretending didn't matter. Grandma Evelyn called me the night before. "I've already painted the plate," she said with a little laugh. Blue flowers again. I know they're still your favorite. They are, I told her. She sounded relieved, almost like she'd been waiting years to hear me admit that nothing had changed. The next afternoon, I left work early at 3:15 p.m. and drove straight to Grandma's house. Her kitchen smelled like melted butter and vanilla. A chocolate cake cooled on the counter beneath a glass dome, and beside it sat the familiar ceramic birthday plate. The blue forget-me-nots were brighter than ever. She had even painted a tiny silver 32 beneath my name. I thought we should make this one special, she whispered. At 5:43 p.m., while we were arranging candles on the cake, my phone vibrated against the kitchen table. It was the family group chat. Mom's message read, "Small change of plans. Since Lily received her medical school acceptance this morning, tonight we'll also celebrate her amazing achievement. Everyone understands. Family knows how to sacrifice." A second message appeared almost immediately. "Please don't make this awkward." I stared at the screen so long it dimmed to black. Then I looked up. The birthday cake sat finished. The candles were lined up in perfect order. The ceramic plate reflected the warm kitchen light. Everything Grandma had spent the day preparing was still exactly where she'd placed it. Only the meaning had changed. I heard Grandma set the icing spatula into the sink. She didn't ask what happened. She had recognized that expression before. Instead, she quietly wiped her hands on a faded blue towel and looked at the untouched cake. "So," she said softly, "another shared celebration." It wasn't really a question. I nodded once. A few seconds later, my father called. His voice carried the same calm certainty he always used when announcing decisions that had already been made. "Hannah, Lily's acceptance only happens once." "I know. You understand." Before I could answer, he repeated the sentence that had followed me through nearly every birthday of my life. Family knows how to sacrifice. For the first time, instead of sounding loving, it sounded like a rule. One I had never agreed to, yet somehow had obeyed for almost 32 years. Grandma Evelyn didn't cry. Somehow, that hurt more than if she had. She reached over, blew out the match she'd been using to light the candles one by one, and carefully returned all 32 candles to their little cardboard box. She did it slowly, as though she were putting away delicate heirlooms instead of another abandoned birthday. "I'll freeze the cake," she said in the same gentle voice she used when folding laundry. "Chocolate keeps well." There wasn't a trace of bitterness in her words. Only practice. That was the part one couldn't bear. She had become practiced at watching my birthdays disappear. I looked around her kitchen and suddenly saw every forgotten year layered on top of this one. The pink bicycle I'd received when I turned 11, but only after Lily had opened all her gifts first, because everyone wanted pictures of the miracle. My 16th birthday dinner that ended with relatives singing an extra song for Lily because she'd won a school spelling bee that week. My 21st birthday, when Dad toasted our family's greatest blessing before remembering to say my name almost as an afterthought. Even my college graduation had somehow become a celebration of Lily getting her driver's license. The memories arrived one after another, not as dramatic betrayals, but as hundreds of tiny edits. Tiny cuts. Tiny revisions. None of them seemed large enough to confront on their own. Together, they had rewritten my place in the family. For years, I told myself my parents weren't choosing Lily over me. They were simply grateful she existed. I repeated that explanation so often it became my own. The uncomfortable truth was that I hadn't only been the overlooked daughter. I had become an accomplice. Whenever someone apologized for combining our birthdays, I smiled and said it didn't matter. Whenever Grandma asked if I was hurt, I insisted everything was fine. Whenever Lily looked guilty, I changed the subject before she had to carry any responsibility. I wasn't protecting peace. I was protecting a system that required my silence. That realization landed harder than the group text. Because once I admitted my own part in keeping the pattern alive, I could no longer pretend I was waiting for someone else to fix it. Grandma finally turned toward me. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to wonder if I should have spoken louder." "You always spoke," I answered. She shook her head. "Not loudly enough." Neither of us said anything after that. The kitchen clock ticked towards 6:30 p.m., the time dinner was supposed to begin. Instead of driving to the restaurant, we stood in a warm kitchen beside a cake no one else would see. The ceramic birthday plate still rested on the counter between us, untouched. For a moment, I considered picking it up and taking it home. Then I realized something. Grandma had never painted that plate because she believed my parents would change. She painted it because she wanted at least one object in the house to tell the truth. It declared, every single year, that the day belonged to me even when nobody else did. That simple realization broke something open inside me. Not in anger, in clarity. And for the first time in 32 years, I stopped asking myself how I could make everyone else comfortable. I started asking a different question. What would happen if, just once, I refused to disappear? The answer came more quietly than I expected. The next morning at 8:12 a.m., I opened the family group chat and started typing. My first draft read, 32 years of choosing Lily over me is enough. I hope one day you understand what you've done. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I deleted every word. The second draft was harsher. Don't contact me again unless you learn the difference between gratitude and favoritism. That one felt satisfying for exactly 5 seconds. I erased it too. Neither message would change anyone's heart. Both were written by the version of me who was still asking to be understood. Instead, I typed something much shorter. I'm grateful for everything you've given me, but I won't participate in celebrations where I'm expected to disappear. I'm creating new traditions for myself. If one day you'd like to be part of them, with everyone treated equally, you'll be welcome. I pressed send at 8:19 a.m. No accusations. No scorekeeping. No argument. Just a boundary. My mother's reply arrived 11 minutes later. Do what you think is best. Nothing else. No apology. No questions. Just 7 words that somehow confirmed everything I already knew. Over the next few weeks, I rented a small 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from Grandma's house. It wasn't fancy. The dining table only seated 6 people, and the paint in the hallway still smelled fresh. But it was mine. When my 33rd birthday arrived the following year, I invited 6 friends, Grandma Evelyn, and despite everything, sent invitations to my parents and Lily. Their seats remained empty. I left them empty all evening. Not as punishment. As proof that forgiveness doesn't require pretending someone was never invited. Grandma carried the chocolate cake to the table herself. Then, with careful hands, she unwrapped the familiar ceramic birthday plate. For the first time in my life, she placed it directly in front of me before anyone else sat down. Nobody interrupted. Nobody redirected the evening. Nobody announced another achievement. My friends sang terribly off-key. Someone burned the garlic bread. We laughed until midnight. It was wonderfully ordinary. A week later, Aunt Melissa called. She had attended my parents' dinner. It was beautiful, she admitted quietly. Expensive flowers. Catered food. Everything looked perfect. She paused. But everyone left early. There wasn't much else to say. A celebration built on appearances had finally run out of people willing to pretend. Almost 6 months later, on a rainy Saturday afternoon, my parents appeared outside my apartment without calling. I saw them through the window and finished making my tea before opening the door. For once, they waited. Not because I wanted revenge. Because conversations happen differently when everyone understands they no longer control the timetable. My father tried first. We did our best. The sentence landed with no weight. My mother tried next. You've hurt the family. That one didn't move me either. Then, after several quiet minutes, she asked something I had never heard from her before. Do you think we can ever be a family again? I answered honestly. Yes. But the first apology can't be for me. They looked confused. It has to be for Grandma. She spent 32 years trying to give me one birthday that belonged to me, and none of us, including me, stood beside her. A week later, they visited Grandma. The conversation between the 3 of them lasted nearly 2 hours. I wasn't there. Grandma never repeated every word, and I never asked her to. Some moments deserve privacy if they're going to mean anything. What she did tell me was enough. They listened this time. The following spring, our family gathered again. There were 2 birthday cakes, 2 speeches, 2 sets of candles. No comparisons. No rankings. When Mom carried the dessert to the table, she quietly placed the blue ceramic birthday plate in front of me before serving anyone else. She didn't announce it. She didn't ask for recognition. She simply did it. Lily smiled across the table and slid her own plate a little farther away so there was room. That tiny gesture meant more than any apology she could have made. Grandma squeezed my hand beneath the table. The old ritual had finally ended. A better one had taken its place. The ceramic plate still has a small crack running through one edge from the day it broke. I've never repaired it. Some things don't need to look untouched to become whole again. Because I finally learned the lesson my birthdays had been trying to teach me all along. The moment you stop competing for love is the moment you discover who has been ready to give it freely all along.